Imagine being paid to kill, but knowing that every contract might be your last. You live in constant fear, trust no one, and sleep with one eye open because everyone wants you dead. You're not a hero from a video game, you're a medieval assassin. And your life is a waking nightmare of paranoia, violence, and inevitable doom. Tonight, we're diving into the brutal reality of history's most dangerous profession, where the average lifespan was measured in months, not years, and where a single mistake meant torture, execution, and damnation for all eternity. This is why. Being a medieval assassin was worse than any horror story ever written. Before we descend into this dark world of shadows and death, make sure you're comfortable and hit that subscribe button if you love falling asleep to fascinating historical stories. Tonight's epic 5-hour journey will take you through the terrifying reality of medieval assassination, from recruitment and training to the inevitable bloody end that awaited every practitioner of this deadly art. Dim the lights, settle in, and prepare to discover why being a medieval assassin was the worst job in human history. The year is 1347, and you're a 14-year-old orphan living on the streets of Florence. Your parents died in the plague 2 years ago, and you've been surviving by stealing bread, picking pockets, and doing whatever it takes to stay alive in a world that has no place for unwanted children. You're quick, clever, and desperate. Exactly the kind of person that Maestro Corvino has been looking for. You don't know his real name, of course. In the shadowy world of medieval assassination, real names are the first casualty. What you do know is that he's offering you food, shelter, and training in exchange for your complete loyalty and absolute silence. To a starving orphan, this seems like salvation. In reality, it's the beginning of a nightmare that will consume whatever remains of your childhood, and probably end with your death before you reach 20. The recruitment of medieval assassins was a carefully orchestrated process that preyed on society's most vulnerable members. Orphans, street children, the desperately poor, and those with nothing left to lose were the primary targets for recruitment. These individuals had already been abandoned by society, making their disappearance unlikely to be noticed or investigated. More importantly, they had already learned the skills necessary for survival in a hostile world: stealth, deception, and the ability to kill when necessary. Maestro Corvino represents a type that was common throughout medieval Europe: the master assassin who ran a small network of killers for hire. These men, and occasionally women, operated in the shadows of medieval society, providing services that powerful people needed but could never publicly acknowledge. They were businessmen of death, entrepreneurs of elimination, and they understood that their success depended on maintaining a steady supply of trained killers. The recruitment process began with careful observation. Potential candidates were watched for weeks or months to assess their suitability. Were they quick and agile? Could they think on their feet? Did they show signs of mental instability that might make them unreliable? Most importantly, did they have the psychological makeup necessary to kill another human being in cold blood? Your first meeting with Maestro Corvino takes place in a tavern basement that reeks of stale wine and unwashed bodies. The man himself is unremarkable: medium height, brown hair, clothes that mark him as a successful merchant. Only his eyes give away his true nature. They're cold, calculating, and completely devoid of the warmth that normal people show when looking at a child. You've been stealing from the wrong people, he tells you, his voice soft but somehow threatening. Lorenzo the baker has noticed his missing loaves. Marco the fishmonger knows someone's been taking his catch. Continue down this path, and you'll find yourself hanging from the city gallows before the month is out. The threat is real and immediate. Medieval justice was swift and brutal, especially for repeat offenders who had no family or social connections to protect them. A street orphan caught stealing could expect little mercy from magistrates who saw such children as nothing more than vermin to be eliminated. But, Corvino continues, I can offer you an alternative. food, shelter, training, and eventually, a profession that will make you wealthy beyond your current dreams. All I ask in return is your complete loyalty and your willingness to learn skills that most people lack the stomach for. The offer is deliberately vague, but the implications are clear enough. You're being recruited into something dangerous and illegal, but the alternative is starvation or execution. For a desperate child, there's really no choice at all. The early stages of assassin training were designed to break down whatever moral restraints the recruit might still possess while building the physical and mental skills necessary for the profession. This process began immediately and was both systematic and brutal. Your new home is a nondescript building in one of Florence's poorer districts. From the outside, it appears to be a modest merchant's house. Inside, it's a training facility designed to produce killers. The basement has been converted into a practice area with straw dummies, wooden targets, and an array of weapons that would make a city guard nervous. Your fellow students are a collection of society's discards, orphans like yourself, runaway serfs, failed apprentices, and young criminals who chose this path over execution. There are 12 of you in total, ranging in age from 13 to 17. You quickly learn that this number is not coincidental. Maestro Corvino maintains exactly 12 students at all times, replacing those who die, disappear, or prove unsuitable for the work. The training regimen is designed to transform ordinary children into efficient killing machines. But the process is far more complex and psychologically damaging than popular culture suggests. Medieval assassins weren't superhuman warriors who could fight off dozens of enemies. They were specialists in stealth, deception, and the precise application of violence when it would be most effective. Physical training begins before dawn each day and continues until well after dark. You learn to move silently across different types of surfaces: stone floors, wooden planks, gravel paths, and muddy ground. This isn't just about walking quietly. It's about understanding how your body moves through space and how to control every aspect of your movement to avoid detection. Climbing is another essential skill. Medieval cities were vertical environments where the ability to scale walls, navigate rooftops, and move through upper-story windows could mean the difference between success and failure. You spend hours each day learning to climb different types of surfaces using minimal equipment: rough stone walls, smooth wooden beams, and even the sides of buildings using only your hands and feet. The weapons training is extensive, but focused on tools that could be concealed and used in close quarters. Daggers are the primary weapon of choice. They're easy to hide, silent when used properly, and deadly when applied with skill and knowledge of human anatomy. You learn dozens of different ways to hold, throw, and use daggers in various situations. But weapons training goes far beyond simple blade work. You learn to use everyday objects as weapons: eating knives, carpenter's tools, even common household items that could be turned deadly in the right hands. A skilled assassin could kill with a sewing needle, a piece of rope, or a simple wooden spoon if the situation required it. Poison is perhaps the most important tool in an assassin's arsenal, and your education in toxicology is both comprehensive and terrifying. Medieval Europe had access to a wide variety of deadly substances, from common plants like foxglove and hemlock to exotic imports like arsenic and mercury compounds. You learn to identify, prepare, and administer dozens of different poisons, each with its own characteristics and applications. Some poisons kill quickly and obviously useful when you want to send a message or create fear. Others work slowly and mimic natural diseases, allowing the assassin to be far away when the victim finally dies. Still others cause madness, paralysis, or other symptoms that might be more valuable than death, depending on the contract's requirements. Imagine being paid to kill, but knowing that every contract might be your last. You live in constant fear, trust no one, and sleep with one eye open because everyone wants you dead. You're not a hero from a video game, you're a medieval assassin. and your life is a waking nightmare of paranoia, violence, and inevitable doom. Tonight, we're diving into the brutal reality of history's most dangerous profession, where the average lifespan was measured in months, not years, and where a single mistake meant torture, execution, and damnation for all eternity. This is why being a medieval assassin was worse than any horror story ever written. Before we descend into this dark world of shadows and death, make sure you're comfortable and hit that subscribe button if you love falling asleep to fascinating historical stories. Tonight's epic 5-hour journey will take you through the terrifying reality of medieval assassination, from recruitment and training to the inevitable bloody end that awaited every practitioner of this deadly art. Dim the lights, settle in, and prepare to discover why being a medieval assassin was the worst job in human history. The year is 1347, and you're a 14-year-old orphan living on the streets of Florence. Your parents died in the plague 2 years ago, and you've been surviving by stealing bread, picking pockets, and doing whatever it takes to stay alive in a world that has no place for unwanted children. You're quick, clever, and desperate. Exactly the kind of person that Maestro Corvino has been looking for. You don't know his real name, of course. In the shadowy world of medieval assassination, real names are the first casualty. What you do know is that he's offering you food, shelter, and training in exchange for your complete loyalty and absolute silence. To a starving orphan, this seems like salvation. In reality, it's the beginning of a nightmare that will consume whatever remains of your childhood, and probably end with your death before you reach 20. The recruitment of medieval assassins was a carefully orchestrated process that preyed on society's most vulnerable members. Orphans, street children, the desperately poor, and those with nothing left to lose were the primary targets for recruitment. These individuals had already been abandoned by society, making their disappearance unlikely to be noticed or investigated. More importantly, they had already learned the skills necessary for survival in a hostile world: stealth, deception, and the ability to kill when necessary. Maestro Corvino represents a type that was common throughout medieval Europe: the master assassin who ran a small network of killers for hire. These men, and occasionally women, operated in the shadows of medieval society, providing services that powerful people needed but could never publicly acknowledge. They were businessmen of death, entrepreneurs of elimination, and they understood that their success depended on maintaining a steady supply of trained killers. The recruitment process began with careful observation. Potential candidates were watched for weeks or months to assess their suitability. Were they quick and agile? Could they think on their feet? Did they show signs of mental instability that might make them unreliable? Most importantly, did they have the psychological makeup necessary to kill another human being in cold blood? Your first meeting with Maestro Corvino takes place in a tavern basement that reeks of stale wine and unwashed bodies. The man himself is unremarkable: medium height, brown hair, clothes that mark him as a successful merchant. Only his eyes give away his true nature. They're cold, calculating, and completely devoid of the warmth that normal people show when looking at a child. "You've been stealing from the wrong people," he tells you, his voice soft but somehow threatening. Lorenzo the baker has noticed his missing loaves. Marco the fishmonger knows someone's been taking his catch. Continue down this path, and you'll find yourself hanging from the city gallows before the month is out. The threat is real and immediate. Medieval justice was swift and brutal, especially for repeat offenders who had no family or social connections to protect them. A street orphan caught stealing could expect little mercy from magistrates who saw such children as nothing more than vermin to be eliminated. But, Corvino continues, I can offer you an alternative: food, shelter, training, and eventually, a profession that will make you wealthy beyond your current dreams. All I ask in return is your complete loyalty and your willingness to learn skills that most people lack the stomach for. The offer is deliberately vague, but the implications are clear enough. You're being recruited into something dangerous and illegal, but the alternative is starvation or execution. For a desperate child, there's really no choice at all. The early stages of assassin training were designed to break down whatever moral restraints the recruit might still possess while building the physical and mental skills necessary for the profession. This process began immediately and was both systematic and brutal. Your new home is a nondescript building in one of Florence's poorer districts. From the outside, it appears to be a modest merchant's house. Inside, it's a training facility designed to produce killers. The basement has been converted into a practice area with straw dummies, wooden targets, and an array of weapons that would make a city guard nervous. Your fellow students are a collection of society's discards, orphans like yourself, runaway serfs, failed apprentices, and young criminals who chose this path over execution. There are 12 of you in total, ranging in age from 13 to 17. You quickly learn that this number is not coincidental. Maestro Corvino maintains exactly 12 students at all times, replacing those who die, disappear, or prove unsuitable for the work. The training regimen is designed to transform ordinary children into efficient killing machines. But the process is far more complex and psychologically damaging than popular culture suggests. Medieval assassins weren't superhuman warriors who could fight off dozens of enemies. They were specialists in stealth, deception, and the precise application of violence when it would be most effective. Physical training begins before dawn each day and continues until well after dark. You learn to move silently across different types of surfaces: stone floors, wooden planks, gravel paths, and muddy ground. This isn't just about walking quietly. It's about understanding how your body moves through space and how to control every aspect of your movement to avoid detection. Climbing is another essential skill. Medieval cities were vertical environments where the ability to scale walls, navigate rooftops, and move through upper-story windows could mean the difference between success and failure. You spend hours each day learning to climb different types of surfaces using minimal equipment: rough stone walls, smooth wooden beams, and even the sides of buildings using only your hands and feet. The weapons training is extensive, but focused on tools that could be concealed and used in close quarters. Daggers are the primary weapon of choice. They're easy to hide, silent when used properly, and deadly when applied with skill and knowledge of human anatomy. You learn dozens of different ways to hold, throw, and use daggers in various situations. But weapons training goes far beyond simple blade work. You learn to use everyday objects as weapons: eating knives, carpenter's tools, even common household items that could be turned deadly in the right hands. A skilled assassin could kill with a sewing needle, a piece of rope, or a simple wooden spoon if the situation required it. Poison is perhaps the most important tool in an assassin's arsenal, and your education in toxicology is both comprehensive and terrifying. Medieval Europe had access to a wide variety of deadly substances, from common plants like foxglove and hemlock to exotic imports like arsenic and mercury compounds. You learn to identify, prepare, and administer dozens of different poisons, each with its own characteristics and applications. Some poisons kill quickly and obviously useful when you want to send a message or create fear. Others work slowly and mimic natural diseases, allowing the assassin to be far away when the victim finally dies. Still others cause madness, paralysis, or other symptoms that might be more valuable than death, depending on the contract's requirements. 6 months into your new life as a trained assassin, you stand in Maestro Corvino's private armory, a hidden chamber beneath his house that contains the tools of your deadly trade. The room is small, windowless, and filled with an array of weapons and devices that would terrify any normal person. But you're no longer normal. You're a professional killer, and these instruments of death are now as familiar to you as a carpenter's tools are to a craftsman. The medieval assassin's arsenal was far more sophisticated and varied than most people realize. Popular culture often depicts assassins as sword-wielding warriors who fought their way through armies of enemies, but the reality was quite different. Real assassins were specialists in stealth and precision, and their weapons reflected this focus on efficiency, concealment, and silent elimination. The dagger is the cornerstone of your arsenal, but not just any dagger will do. Your primary weapon is a stiletto, a thin needle-like blade designed specifically for piercing armor and reaching vital organs. The blade is only 6 inches long, but it's perfectly balanced and sharp enough to slide between ribs or penetrate the gaps in chainmail. With minimal resistance, the stiletto's design reflects centuries of refinement in the art of killing. The narrow blade creates wounds that are difficult for medieval physicians to treat, and the small entry wound often conceals the extent of internal damage. A skilled assassin can kill with a stiletto thrust that leaves barely visible external evidence, making it appear that the victim died of natural causes. But you carry multiple daggers, each designed for different situations. A broader blade for cutting throats or severing arteries. A curved knife that's more effective for disemboweling or creating wounds that will cause slow, agonizing death. A serrated blade that tears flesh and creates wounds that are nearly impossible to heal properly. Each weapon has been carefully crafted by master smiths who specialize in creating tools for people in your profession. The metal is of the highest quality, folded and tempered to hold an edge that can cut through leather, cloth, and flesh with equal ease. The handles are wrapped in leather that's been treated to provide a secure grip, even when wet with blood. Maintenance of these weapons is a daily ritual that borders on obsession. You spend at least an hour each morning sharpening, cleaning, and inspecting your blades. A dull knife is not just ineffective, it's dangerous to the wielder. A blade that fails at a critical moment means capture, torture, and death. The whetstones you use are as precious as the weapons themselves, and you've learned to judge the sharpness of a blade by the sound it makes when cutting through different materials. Throwing weapons form another crucial category in your arsenal. Medieval assassins were masters of projectile weapons that could kill silently from a distance. Your collection includes throwing knives of various weights and sizes, each balanced for different ranges and target types. Light blades for close range. Work where accuracy is more important than penetrating power. Heavy knives for longer distances where momentum is needed to drive the blade deep, enough to cause fatal wounds. But throwing knives are just the beginning of your projectile arsenal. You carry a selection of darts, small, weighted projectiles that can be thrown with incredible accuracy at close range. These darts are often coated with poison, turning even a minor wound into a death sentence. The poisons used vary depending on the desired effect. Some kill within minutes, others take hours or days, and some cause symptoms that mimic common diseases. The crossbow represents the pinnacle of medieval ranged assassination technology. Your personal crossbow is a masterwork of engineering, small enough to be concealed under a cloak, yet powerful enough to drive a bolt through chainmail at 50 yards. The weapon breaks down into components that can be hidden separately and assembled quickly when needed. The bolts for your crossbow are works of art in their own right. Each one is handcrafted for maximum lethality, with broadheads designed to cause massive internal bleeding or bodkins that can penetrate the finest armor. Some bolts are hollow, filled with poison that disperses upon impact. Others are designed to break apart inside the wound, making removal impossible and ensuring a slow, agonizing death. But perhaps the most insidious weapons in your arsenal are those that don't look like weapons at all. Medieval assassins were masters of disguise, implements that could pass casual inspection while remaining deadly effective when needed. Your eating knife appears to be a common utensil, but the blade has been specially sharpened and the handle weighted for throwing. Your belt buckle conceals a small but lethal blade. Even your shoes have been modified with hidden compartments containing poison needles. The art of concealed weapons reaches its peak in items that serve dual purposes. Your writing quill is actually a hollow tube that can fire poison darts with a sharp breath. Your prayer book has pages that have been cut out to conceal a small crossbow. Your merchant's scales can be quickly converted into a garrote for silent strangulation. Poison represents perhaps the most sophisticated aspect of your arsenal, requiring extensive knowledge of chemistry, botany, and human physiology. Your poison kit contains dozens of different substances, each with its own characteristics and applications. The kit itself is disguised as a spice merchant's sample case, with each poison hidden among legitimate herbs and seasonings. Arsenic is one of your most reliable tools. Tasteless, odorless, and nearly undetectable when properly administered. It can be mixed into food or drink, applied to clothing or bedding, or even used to contaminate the victim's personal items. Death from arsenic poisoning mimics many common ailments, making it nearly impossible for medieval physicians to identify the true cause. Mercury compounds offer different advantages. They can be absorbed through the skin, making it possible to poison someone simply by contaminating objects they handle regularly. The symptoms of mercury poisoning include madness and erratic behavior, which can be useful when the goal is to discredit someone rather than simply kill them. Plant-based poisons form the largest category in your collection. Foxglove extract causes heart failure that appears natural. Hemlock creates paralysis that allows the victim to remain conscious while their body shuts down. Belladonna causes hallucinations and delirium before death. Each plant requires different preparation methods and dosages, and the knowledge of how to extract and concentrate the active compounds is closely guarded by the assassin community. But the most exotic poisons in your collection come from animals. Certain spiders, snakes, and exotic creatures produce toxins that are incredibly potent and virtually undetectable. These substances are expensive and difficult to obtain, but they're invaluable for high-priority targets who might be expecting more common poisons. The application of poison requires specialized tools and techniques. Your kit includes hollow needles that can inject poison directly into the bloodstream, tiny glass spheres that can be crushed to release poison gas, specially treated fabrics that release toxins when they come into contact with skin, even jewelry that can be designed to scratch the wearer and introduce poison through the wound. Disguise materials form another crucial category of your equipment. Your collection includes wigs, false beards, makeup, and clothing that can transform your appearance completely. But medieval disguise work goes far beyond simply changing how you look. It involves becoming an entirely different person with different mannerisms, speech patterns, and social behaviors. The makeup you use is made from readily available materials that won't arouse suspicion. Soot and charcoal for darkening skin or creating the appearance of dirt and grime. Flour and chalk for lightening complexion or creating the pallor of illness. Berry juices and other natural dyes for changing hair color or creating the appearance of bruises and injuries. Clothing is perhaps the most important aspect of disguise, as it immediately communicates social status, occupation, and regional origin to observers. Your wardrobe includes garments appropriate for every social class, from peasant rags to noble finery. Each outfit is complete with appropriate accessories, tools for craftsmen, weapons for soldiers, religious items for clergy. But the most sophisticated disguises involve changing your apparent physical characteristics. Padding can alter your apparent build and posture. Specially designed shoes can change your height and gait. Even simple techniques like placing pebbles in your shoes can create a convincing limp that completely changes how you move through the world. Lock-picking tools represent another essential category of equipment. Medieval locks were generally simpler than modern mechanisms, but they still required specialized tools and techniques to defeat. Your lock-picking kit is disguised as a set of eating utensils, with each tool serving a dual purpose that allows you to carry them without suspicion. The picks themselves are works of precision engineering, crafted from the finest steel and shaped to manipulate the internal mechanisms of different lock types. You've learned to identify locks by sight and sound, understanding which tools will be most effective for each mechanism. The ability to open locked doors, chests, and rooms silently is often the difference between success and failure in your profession. Rope and climbing equipment are essential for navigating the vertical environment of medieval cities. Your rope is made from the finest materials available, silk when stealth is paramount, hemp when strength is more important. The rope is treated with oils that keep it supple and quiet, and it's dyed to blend with stone walls and wooden beams, grappling hooks and climbing. Claws allow you to scale walls and buildings that would be impossible to climb with hands alone. These tools are crafted to be as quiet as possible while still providing secure purchase on stone, wood, and other building materials. The ability to reach upper-story windows or rooftop access points often provides the element of surprise that makes assassination possible, but perhaps the most important tools in your arsenal are those that help you gather information about your targets. Listening devices made from hollow reeds or metal tubes allow you to eavesdrop on conversations through walls or doors. Mirrors and polished metal surfaces help you observe people without being seen. Even simple tools like chalk for marking buildings or thread for detecting if doors have been opened serve crucial intelligence gathering functions. Document forgery tools allow you to create false credentials, letters of introduction, and other papers that can provide access to restricted areas or protected individuals. Your forgery kit includes various inks, papers, and seals that can replicate official documents convincingly enough to fool casual inspection. The creation of forged documents requires extensive knowledge of official procedures, handwriting styles, and the materials used by different organizations. You've studied samples of genuine documents from various sources, learning to replicate not just the appearance, but also the language patterns and formatting conventions that make documents appear authentic. Medical tools serve a dual purpose. In your arsenal, they can be used to treat injuries you might sustain during missions, but they're also effective instruments of torture and assassination. Surgical knives can inflict precise wounds that cause maximum pain or damage. Bone saws can be used for dismemberment when you need to dispose of evidence. Even simple tools like needles and thread can be used to inflict slow, agonizing torture. When information extraction is required, the knowledge of human anatomy that comes with medical training makes you a more effective killer. Understanding the location of major arteries, vital organs, and nerve centers allows you to cause death quickly and efficiently when speed is important, or slowly and painfully when psychological impact is the goal. But maintaining this extensive arsenal requires constant attention and resources. Weapons must be kept sharp and clean. Poisons have limited shelf lives and must be replaced regularly. Disguised materials wear out and need replacement. The cost of maintaining professional quality equipment is enormous, and much of your income goes toward keeping your tools in perfect condition. The psychological impact of constantly handling instruments of death cannot be underestimated. Every tool in your collection exists for one purpose: to end human life or to facilitate ending human life. Living surrounded by these implements of destruction takes a toll on your mental health that compounds over time. You find yourself becoming emotionally attached to your weapons in unhealthy ways. The dagger that killed your first target becomes a talisman that you can't bear to replace even when better weapons become available. The poison that proved particularly effective becomes your preferred method, even when other approaches might be more appropriate. The knowledge you've gained about killing techniques and human vulnerability changes how you see the world around you. Every person you meet is automatically assessed as a potential target. You notice their weaknesses, their habits, the ways they could be approached and eliminated. This constant tactical thinking makes normal social interaction difficult and contributes to the isolation that defines the assassin's life. As you stand in the armory, surrounded by the tools of your deadly trade, you understand that these weapons are both your greatest assets and your heaviest burden. They give you the power to eliminate anyone who stands in your way, but they also mark you as someone who can never return to normal society. The moment you picked up your first dagger, you began a journey that can only end in violence and death. Most likely your own. The arsenal of a medieval assassin represents centuries of refinement in the art of killing, but it also represents the corruption of human ingenuity toward destructive ends. Every tool has been designed to exploit human vulnerability, to turn the assassin into a more efficient predator of their own species. Tomorrow, you'll select weapons from this collection for your first real contract, your first professional kill. The choice of tools will depend on the target, the location, and the specific requirements of the job. But regardless of which weapons you choose, you'll be carrying instruments that have been designed for one purpose only: to end a human life as efficiently and quietly as possible. 3 days after your tour of the armory, Maestro Corvino summons you to his private study. The room is dimly lit by a single candle, and the shadows seem to dance menacingly on the walls as he spreads a collection of documents across his desk. Your heart pounds as you realize that this is the moment you've been training for, your first real contract, your first professional kill. Lorenzo DiMarco, Corvino says, tapping a piece of parchment with his finger. A wool merchant who has been problematic for certain business interests in the city. He's been undercutting prices, bribing officials, and generally making life difficult for people who prefer a more orderly marketplace. The target's description is deliberately vague, but you understand the implications. Someone with money and influence wants Lorenzo dead, and they're willing to pay handsomely for his elimination. The reasons don't matter. In the world of professional assassination, moral justifications are luxuries that you can't afford to consider. Your first contract represents a crucial milestone in the life of a medieval assassin. It's the moment when theoretical knowledge becomes practical application, when years of training are put to the ultimate test. But it's also the point of no return. Once you've killed for money, you've crossed a line that separates you forever from normal society. Preparation for your first contract begins immediately and involves every skill you've learned during your training. Intelligence gathering is the foundation of successful assassination, and you spend the next week learning everything possible about Lorenzo DiMarco, his habits, his schedule, his security arrangements, and his vulnerabilities. Lorenzo is a successful merchant in his mid-40s who lives in a well-appointed house near the city's commercial district. He's married with 3 children, employs a small staff of servants, and maintains a warehouse where he stores his wool inventory. On the surface, he appears to be a typical successful businessman, but your investigation reveals details that make him a viable target for assassination. His daily routine is predictable, which is both an advantage and a potential trap. Every morning, Lorenzo walks from his house to his warehouse, a journey of about half a mile through moderately busy streets. He usually makes this trip alone, carrying only a small eating knife for protection. This apparent vulnerability could be genuine, or it could be bait designed to lure assassins into a trap. Medieval merchants who dealt in valuable commodities like wool were often targets for robbery and violence. So many developed sophisticated security arrangements that weren't immediately obvious. Lorenzo might appear to travel alone, but he could have guards following at a distance or positioned along his route. His predictable schedule might be designed to funnel potential attackers into areas where they could be easily captured or killed. Your investigation reveals that Lorenzo has enemies beyond whoever hired you to kill him. He's involved in several ongoing business disputes, has been accused of cheating customers, and has allegedly had affairs with the wives of other merchants. Any of these conflicts could provide cover for your assassination. If Lorenzo dies violently, there will be multiple suspects with obvious motives, but this complexity also creates dangers. If other people are planning to harm Lorenzo, your assassination attempt might coincide with their efforts, creating chaos that could expose you. If Lorenzo is already taking precautions against other threats, those same precautions might detect and thwart your approach. The choice of method for your first kill requires careful consideration of multiple factors. Maestro Curvino has given you complete freedom to plan and execute the assassination, but he's also made it clear that failure will result in your own death. The pressure to succeed is enormous, but so is the pressure to avoid detection and capture. Poison offers several advantages for a first contract. It can be administered without direct confrontation. It allows you to be far away when the victim dies, and it can be made to appear like natural death if done skillfully. Lorenzo's predictable routine includes stopping at the same tavern each morning for bread and ale, providing an obvious opportunity to contaminate his food or drink. But poison also has significant disadvantages. Medieval taverns were social environments where many people handled food and drink, making it difficult to ensure that only the intended target would be affected. The delayed action of most poisons means that you can't be certain the assassination has succeeded until hours or days later. If the poison fails to work, or if Lorenzo survives and identifies the source, you'll be exposed and hunted. Direct assassination with a blade offers more certainty and immediate results, but it also involves much greater personal risk. Getting close enough to Lorenzo to use a dagger means exposing yourself to identification and capture. The act of stabbing someone creates noise, blood, and other evidence that could lead to your detection. Escaping from the scene of a violent crime at a crowded city requires split-second timing and perfect execution. The location for the assassination becomes a crucial consideration. Lorenzo's house is well protected and surrounded by neighbors who might witness suspicious activity. His warehouse is isolated, but could be a trap if he's expecting trouble. The streets between his home and business offer multiple opportunities, but also multiple risks. After days of careful observation and planning, you decide on an approach that combines stealth, misdirection, and precise timing. You'll intercept Lorenzo during his morning walk, but not at an obvious ambush point. Instead, you'll create a situation that draws him into a location where you can kill him quietly and escape without being seen. The plan requires you to pose as a street beggar, a disguise that allows you to position yourself along Lorenzo's route without arousing suspicion. Medieval cities were full of beggars, and most people ignored them completely. Your beggar disguise includes ragged clothes, strategic dirt and grime, and a fake injury that explains why you're sitting in one location rather than moving around. The weapon you choose for the kill is a stiletto, concealed in a fake bandage around your supposedly injured arm. The narrow blade can be deployed quickly and silently, and the bandage provides both concealment and an explanation for why you're keeping one arm immobile. If questioned later, witnesses will remember an injured beggar, not an armed assassin. Morning of the assassination arrives gray and drizzly, with a light rain that will help mask sounds and wash away evidence. You take your position well before Lorenzo's usual departure time, settling into your beggar persona and waiting for your target to appear. The rain soaks through your ragged clothes, and the cold stone of the street chills your body. But you remain motionless and alert when Lorenzo finally appears. Walking briskly through the rain with his cloak pulled tight against the weather, your heart begins to race. This is the moment when months of training will be put to the ultimate test. Everything you've learned about stealth, timing, and killing must come together in the next few minutes, or you'll likely die in the attempt. As Lorenzo approaches your position, you begin your performance. You call out weakly, asking for alms and claiming to be a wounded veteran of recent wars. Your voice is deliberately pathetic and non-threatening, designed to evoke pity rather than suspicion. Most importantly, your plea for help gives Lorenzo a reason to approach you voluntarily rather than forcing you to chase him. Lorenzo's reaction is exactly what you hoped for. He's a successful merchant who can afford to be generous, and your apparent helplessness appeals to whatever charitable instincts he possesses. He approaches your position and reaches into his purse to find a coin, bringing himself within striking distance of your concealed weapon. The kill itself happens faster than you expected. One moment Lorenzo is bending over to drop a coin into your outstretched hand, and the next moment your stiletto is sliding between his ribs and into his heart. The blade penetrates cleanly, meeting less resistance than you anticipated. Lorenzo's eyes widen in shock and pain, but he doesn't have time to cry out before the damage to his heart stops his circulation. The physical sensation of killing another human being is both more and less than your training prepared you for. The resistance of flesh and bone against your blade is exactly what you practiced on animal carcasses, but the psychological impact of watching life drain from another person's eyes is overwhelming. For a moment, you're paralyzed by the magnitude of what you've just done, but your training takes over, and you complete the assassination according to plan. You lower Lorenzo's body gently to the ground, arranging it to look like he's collapsed from illness rather than violence. The small wound left by your stiletto is barely visible, especially in the dim light and rain. To casual observers, it will appear that the merchant has suffered some kind of sudden medical emergency. Your escape is as carefully planned as the assassination itself. You remain in character as a beggar, calling for help and claiming that the merchant has collapsed. This performance serves multiple purposes. It establishes you as a witness rather than a suspect. It explains your presence at the scene, and it ensures that Lorenzo's body will be discovered quickly rather than lying in the street for hours. As other people respond to your calls for help, you fade into the crowd of concerned citizens who gather around Lorenzo's body. Your beggar disguise makes you invisible to most observers, and your apparent distress at the merchant's collapse reinforces your role as an innocent bystander. Within minutes, you're able to slip away from the scene without anyone paying attention. To your departure, the immediate aftermath of your first kill is a confusing mixture of triumph, relief, and horror. You've successfully completed your first contract without being detected or captured, proving that your training has been effective. But you've also taken a human life for money, crossing a moral boundary that can never be uncrossed. The physical evidence of your crime is minimal, but must be carefully disposed of. Your stiletto needs to be cleaned thoroughly to remove any traces of blood or tissue. Your clothes must be burned or buried to eliminate fibers or stains that could link you to the scene. Even your fake bandages and beggar's props must be destroyed to prevent anyone from connecting them to the assassination. But the psychological evidence of what you've done is permanent and inescapable. The image of Lorenzo's face as he died is burned into your memory. The feeling of your blade sliding into his body haunts your dreams. The knowledge that you've ended a life, that somewhere in the city, a wife is becoming a widow and children are becoming orphans, weighs on your conscience in ways that no amount of training could prepare you for. The payment for your first contract arrives 3 days later, delivered by one of Maestro Corvino's intermediaries. The amount is substantial, more money than you've ever seen in your life, enough to live comfortably for months. But the coins feel heavy in your hands, weighted with the knowledge of how they were earned. Corvino's reaction to your successful completion of the contract is businesslike and unsentimental. He reviews the details of the assassination, noting what went well and what could be improved for future jobs. Your technique was adequate, your planning was sound, and your execution was clean. Most importantly, there's been no investigation or suspicion directed toward his organization. But he also makes it clear that this is just the beginning. One successful contract doesn't make you a professional assassin. It makes you an apprentice who has proven capable of basic competence. The real test will come with subsequent contracts, each one more challenging and dangerous than the last. The news of Lorenzo's death spreads quickly through the merchant community, but the official explanation is exactly what you intended. The feel. City's physicians conclude that he died of a sudden heart ailment, possibly brought on by the stress of his business dealings. There's no investigation, no search for suspects, and no indication that anyone suspects foul play. This official acceptance of the cover story is both reassuring and disturbing. It confirms that your assassination technique was effective and undetectable, but it also demonstrates how easy it is to murder someone in medieval society if you have the right skills and knowledge. The thin veneer of law and order that protects. Most people from violence is easily penetrated by someone who understands its weaknesses. As the days pass and life in the city returns to normal, you begin to understand the true nature of your new profession. You're not a warrior or a soldier fighting for noble causes. You're a predator who kills for money, a parasite who feeds on the conflicts and ambitions of others. The romantic notions of honor and justice that might have motivated your initial decision to become an assassin are revealed as naive fantasies. Your first contract has transformed you from a student into a professional killer, but it's also begun a process of psychological deterioration that will continue for as long as you remain in this profession. Each subsequent kill will become easier to execute, but harder to live with. The skills that make you effective as an assassin will also make you less capable of normal human relationships and emotions. The success of your first contract has also marked you as a valuable asset to Maestro Corvino and his organization. But it's also made you a potential threat that must be carefully managed. You now possess knowledge and skills that could be dangerous if you ever decided to turn against your masters or sell your services to their competitors. As you lie in your bed on the night after receiving payment for Lorenzo's death, you understand that you've begun a journey that can only end in violence. Every contract you complete makes you more valuable, but also more dangerous to everyone around you. Every skill you develop makes you more effective, but also more isolated from normal society. Your first kill has baptized you in blood, marking you forever as someone who has crossed the ultimate moral boundary. There's no going back to innocence, no returning to the life you might have had if you'd made different choices. You're now a medieval assassin, and that identity will define and ultimately destroy whatever remains of your humanity. The rain continues to fall outside your window, washing the streets clean of the day's sins. But no amount of rain can wash away what you've done or what you've become. Your first contract is complete, but it's only the beginning of a nightmare that will consume whatever remains of your life. 6 months have passed since your first kill, and you've completed 4 more contracts with increasing skill and efficiency. You're no longer an apprentice. You're a professional assassin with a growing reputation in the underground networks that facilitate murder for hire. But success in this profession comes with a price that goes far beyond the obvious risks of capture and execution. The daily life of a medieval assassin is a constant exercise in paranoia, deception, and psychological survival. Every moment of every day is shaped by the knowledge that you're surrounded by enemies who would kill you without hesitation if they discovered your true identity. The skills that make you effective at your job also make normal human interaction impossible, trapping you in a world of shadows and lies. Your living arrangements reflect the fundamental isolation of your profession. You maintain 3 different residences in different parts of the city, each one associated with a different false identity. The merchant Giovanni, who lives near the market square. The clerk Francesco, who rents a room near the cathedral. The laborer Antonio, who sleeps in a boarding house near the docks. None of these identities knows about the others, and none of them knows about your true profession. Each residence is Spartan and temporary. containing only the minimum possessions necessary to maintain your cover identity. You can't afford to become attached to any location or accumulate belongings that might be difficult to abandon quickly. Every few months, you're forced to abandon one identity and create a new one, leaving behind any relationships or routines that might have developed. Constant need to maintain multiple false identities is psychologically exhausting. You must remember different personal histories, different speech patterns, different mannerisms for each persona. Giovanni, the merchant, is gregarious and outgoing, always ready with a joke or a story. Francesco, the clerk, is quiet and studious, more comfortable with books than people. Antonio, the laborer, is rough and direct, quick to anger but equally quick to forgive. But the most challenging aspect of maintaining these identities is remembering which personality you're supposed to be at any given moment. The wrong gesture, the wrong accent, or the wrong response to a familiar face could expose you instantly. You've developed elaborate mental exercises to help you stay in character, but the constant vigilance required is mentally and emotionally draining. Sleep becomes a luxury that you can rarely afford. Even when you're physically exhausted, your mind remains alert for signs of danger. Every sound in the night could be assassins sent by your enemies. Every unexpected knock on the door could be city guards coming to arrest you. Every change in routine by your neighbors could indicate that your cover has been blown. When you do manage to sleep, your dreams are haunted by the faces of your victims. Lorenzo's shocked expression as your blade found his heart. Maria, the baker's wife, who died slowly from the poison you slipped into her morning bread. Thomas, the young noble, whose throat you cut in his own bedchamber while his family slept. In the next room, each death adds another ghost to the collection that torments your unconscious mind. The psychological impact of repeated killing goes far beyond simple guilt or remorse. Each murder chips away at your capacity for normal human emotion, replacing empathy and compassion with cold calculation and predatory instinct. You find yourself analyzing everyone you meet as potential targets, automatically noting their vulnerabilities and planning how you would kill them if necessary. This constant tactical thinking makes genuine relationships impossible. When you look at a woman, you don't see beauty or personality. You see weak points where a blade could penetrate, pressure points that could be used for strangulation, habits that could be exploited to administer poison. When you interact with men, you're automatically assessing their strength, their weapons, their potential as threats or obstacles. The few relationships you do maintain are purely transactional and based on mutual benefit, rather than genuine affection. The tavern keeper who provides information about potential targets in exchange for protection from his creditors. The corrupt city guard who warns you about investigations in exchange for a share of your profits. The fence who helps you dispose of stolen goods taken from your victims. Even these professional relationships are dangerous and unstable. Any of your associates could betray you if offered sufficient incentive, or if they perceive you as a threat to their own survival. Trust is a luxury that assassins can't afford, and paranoia is a survival skill that must be cultivated and maintained. Your daily routine is designed to minimize risk, while maximizing your ability to gather intelligence and identify potential threats. You never follow the same route twice, never eat at the same establishment regularly, never develop habits that could be predicted and exploited by enemies. Every decision about where to go and what to do is filtered through calculations about security and survival. The weapons you carry vary depending on your current identity and the level of threat you perceive. Giovanni, the merchant, carries only a simple eating knife and perhaps a small purse of coins for bribes. Francesco, the clerk, might have a stylus that doubles as a stabbing weapon and a small vial of poison disguised as ink. Antonio, the laborer, could justify carrying a variety of tools that serve as effective weapons, but regardless of your current identity, you're never truly unarmed. Years of training have taught you to turn any object into a weapon, A wine cup becomes a bludgeon. A piece of rope becomes a garrote. Even a quill pen can be used to blind or kill if wielded with sufficient skill and desperation. The constant need to be prepared for violence affects every aspect of your daily life. You can't relax in a tavern without noting the exits and potential weapons. You can't walk down a street without checking for ambush points and escape routes. You can't engage in casual conversation without listening for information that might be useful or dangerous. Food becomes a particular source of anxiety because poison is such a common tool in your profession. You never eat anything that you haven't personally prepared or that hasn't been tasted by someone else first. You carry antidotes for the most common poisons, but you know that a skilled assassin could use substances that no antidote can counteract. The preparation of your own meals becomes a complex ritual designed to minimize the risk of poisoning. You buy ingredients from different vendors to prevent anyone from knowing your complete shopping list. You prepare food in different locations to avoid establishing patterns. You even vary your diet to make it more difficult for potential poisoners to predict what you'll be eating. But the paranoia extends beyond concerns about immediate physical threats. You must also worry about investigations, informants, and the gradual accumulation of evidence that could eventually lead to your capture. Every person you interact with is a potential witness who might remember your face or your behavior. Every transaction you make creates a record that could be traced back to you. The management of evidence becomes a constant preoccupation. Weapons must be cleaned and hidden after each use. Clothing worn during assassinations must be destroyed or altered beyond recognition. Even seemingly innocent items like rope, candles, or writing materials could be linked to specific crimes if discovered by investigators. Your financial situation is both better and worse than most people in medieval society. The payments for assassination contracts are substantial, often more than a skilled craftsman might earn in a year. But this money comes with enormous risks and costs that eat away at your profits. You must pay for multiple residences, false identities, weapons, poisons, and bribes to maintain your cover and avoid detection. More importantly, you can't invest your money in legitimate businesses or property that might provide long-term security. Any substantial assets could be traced back to you and used as evidence of your criminal activities. You're forced to keep your wealth in easily portable forms, coins, gems, or other valuables that can be quickly converted to cash or abandoned, if necessary. The lack of long-term financial security adds another layer of stress to your already precarious existence. You're making good money now, but you know that your career will likely be short and violent. Most assassins don't live long enough to retire, and those who do often find themselves hunted by former enemies or betrayed by former allies. The social isolation of your profession extends beyond the obvious inability to form genuine relationships. You're cut off from the normal social institutions that provide support and meaning for most people. You can't participate in religious activities without risking exposure. Priests are trained to recognize signs of guilt and spiritual distress. You can't join guilds or professional organizations that might provide economic security and social connections. Even simple pleasures become complicated by your profession. You can't enjoy music or entertainment without remaining alert for threats. You can't appreciate art or literature without analyzing them for useful information about potential targets or techniques. You can't participate in festivals or celebrations without worrying about the crowds and the reduced security they represent. The physical toll of your profession is as significant as the psychological damage. The constant stress and vigilance wear down your body in ways that are difficult to quantify, but impossible to ignore. You age rapidly, developing the hollow eyes and gaunt features that mark people who live under constant threat. Your hands shake slightly from the accumulated effects of handling poisons and the psychological strain of repeated killing. Sleep deprivation compounds these physical problems. Even when you do manage to rest, it's rarely the deep restorative sleep that your body needs. You've trained yourself to wake at the slightest sound or disturbance, a survival skill that prevents your body from fully relaxing and recovering from the day's stresses. The weapons and poisons you work with daily pose their own health risks. Exposure to toxic substances, even in small amounts, accumulates over time and can cause organ damage, neurological problems, and other health issues. The constant handling of sharp blades leaves your hands scarred and calloused, and the risk of accidental injury is always present. But perhaps the most insidious aspect of the assassin's daily life is the gradual erosion of your humanity. Each kill makes the next one easier to contemplate and execute. Each lie makes deception more natural and automatic. Each betrayal makes trust more difficult and dangerous. You're becoming something that's no longer fully human in the way that normal people understand humanity. The moral framework that guides most people's behavior has been systematically dismantled and replaced with a cold pragmatism that values only survival and success. You no longer think in terms of right and wrong, but rather in terms of profitable and unprofitable, safe and dangerous, useful and expendable. This transformation is both necessary for survival in your profession and destructive to whatever remains of your original personality. The child who was recruited into this life is gone, replaced by a predator who wears human faces but lacks human emotions. You're becoming a perfect killing machine, but the cost is the loss of everything that once made you a person rather than a weapon. As you sit in your current safe house, counting the coins from your latest contract and planning your next identity change, you understand that you're trapped in a profession that will ultimately destroy you. Every day you survive is a victory, but it's also another step toward the inevitable end that awaits all assassins: death by violence, betrayal, or the slow poison of a life lived entirely in shadows. The daily hell of an assassin's life is not the dramatic adventure portrayed in stories and legends. It's a grinding existence of paranoia, isolation, and gradual dehumanization that transforms people into monsters while slowly killing everything that once made them human. You've gained the power to take life at will, but you've lost the ability to truly live. 2 years into your career as a professional assassin, the nightmare you've always known was coming finally arrives. You wake in your safe house near the docks to find a message slipped under your door. A simple piece of parchment with a single word written in blood: found. The message could be from any number of enemies you've accumulated during your career. The family of one of your victims who has finally traced their loved one's death back to you. A rival assassin seeking to eliminate competition. City guards who have connected enough evidence to identify you as a killer. Or worst of all, your own organization deciding that you've become too dangerous or unreliable to keep alive. The life of a medieval assassin inevitably leads to this moment, when the hunter becomes the hunted, when all the enemies you've made and all the evidence you've left behind finally converge into a coordinated effort to destroy you. This isn't a matter of if, but when. And every assassin knows that their profession has only two possible endings: retirement through death, or death through retirement. Your first instinct is to run, to abandon this identity and location immediately, and disappear into one of your other personas. But as you gather your essential belongings and prepare to flee, you realize that the situation is more serious than a simple threat. Your other safe houses have been compromised as well. There are watchers positioned outside each location, and your carefully maintained separate identities have somehow been connected. The discovery that all your identities have been blown simultaneously indicates a level of investigation and coordination that goes far beyond what individual victims, families, or local authorities could manage. Someone with significant resources and expertise has been tracking you for months, possibly years, carefully mapping your entire network before moving to close the trap. The paranoia that has been your constant companion throughout your career now becomes overwhelming terror. Every face in the crowd could belong to an enemy agent. Every sound could herald the approach of killers sent to eliminate you. Every shadow could conceal an assassin more skilled than yourself, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. But terror, while natural, is also potentially fatal. Your training kicks in, overriding panic with the cold calculation necessary for survival. You need to identify your enemies, understand their capabilities and intentions, and find a way to either escape their trap or turn the tables on them. The skills that made you an effective killer must now be used to keep you alive. The first priority is gathering intelligence about who is hunting you and why. The message under your door provides some clues. The use of blood as ink suggests either dramatic flair or a desire to intimidate, both of which point toward professional killers rather than law enforcement. The single word "found" implies that your hunters want you to know you've been discovered, which could be psychological warfare or an invitation to negotiate. Your network of informants and contacts, carefully cultivated over years of operation, becomes crucial for survival. But approaching any of them is dangerous. They could have been compromised, turned against you, or simply too frightened to help someone who has become a marked target. Each contact you make risks exposing your location and plans to your enemies. The tavern keeper who has provided information in the past refuses to meet with you, claiming illness but clearly terrified of association with someone who has become a liability. The corrupt guard who warned you about investigations sends word that he can no longer help and advises you to leave the city immediately. Even the fence who helped dispose of stolen goods from your victims has disappeared entirely. His shop closed and his whereabouts unknown. The systematic abandonment by your support network reveals the true nature of relationships in the criminal underworld. Loyalty exists only as long as it's profitable and safe, and anyone who becomes a liability will be quickly discarded by former allies. The isolation that has always characterized your profession becomes complete when you're marked for death. One contact proves willing to meet. Elena, a prostitute who works in the taverns near the cathedral and who has occasionally provided information about potential targets among her clients. Her willingness to help comes with a price that goes beyond money. She wants safe passage out of the city for herself and her young daughter. Recognizing that association with you has made her a target as well. Elena's information is both valuable and terrifying. The hunt for you is being coordinated by the Medici family, one of Florence's most powerful banking dynasties. Your assassination of Lorenzo DeMarco, your very first contract, has finally been traced back to you through a complex investigation that took nearly 2 years to complete. Lorenzo was apparently more important to the Medici interests than your original client revealed, and his death has cost them significant money and influence. The Medici aren't relying on local authorities or amateur revenge seekers. They've hired the Compagnia della Morte, the most feared assassination guild in Italy. This organization operates like a dark mirror of legitimate merchant guilds with professional standards, training programs, and resources that far exceed what individual assassins can access. They specialize in hunting other assassins, and their success rate is legendary throughout the criminal underworld. The revelation that you're being hunted by the Compagnia della Morte transforms your situation from dangerous to nearly hopeless. These aren't ordinary killers or city guards who might be bribed or evaded. They're specialists who understand every technique and strategy that you might employ because they use the same methods themselves. They know how assassins think, how they operate, and most importantly, how they try to escape when cornered. Elena provides additional details that make your situation even worse. The Compagnia has assigned at least 6 operatives to your elimination, each one a master assassin with years of experience. They've been tracking you for months, learning your habits, mapping your network, and preparing a coordinated assault that will close off every possible escape route. More disturbing still, they've been patient enough to let you continue operating. While they gathered intelligence, using your own activities to learn more about your methods and contacts. Every contract you've completed over the past year has been observed and analyzed, providing your enemies with detailed knowledge of your capabilities and preferences. The psychological impact of learning that you've been watched and studied for months is devastating. Every moment of privacy you thought you had was an illusion. Every careful precaution you took was observed and cataloged. Every person you trusted was potentially compromised. The paranoia that has defined your existence is revealed to have been inadequate. You weren't nearly suspicious enough, but understanding the nature of the threat also provides opportunities for survival. The Campania's patience and thoroughness, while making them incredibly dangerous, also means they've invested significant time and resources in your elimination. They want to capture you alive if possible, both to extract information about your clients and methods, and to make an example that will deter other assassins from interfering with Medici interests. This desire to take you alive creates a narrow window of opportunity. If they simply wanted you dead, you would already be a corpse. The fact that you're still breathing means they're planning something more elaborate, a capture operation that will necessarily be more complex and risky than a simple assassination. Escape plan must account for the professional capabilities of your pursuers while exploiting the few advantages you still possess. You know the city better than outsiders, even skilled ones. You have resources and hiding places that may not have been discovered. Most importantly, you have nothing left to lose, which can make you more dangerous than enemies who are concerned about their own survival. The first step is abandoning everything that connects you to your known identities. This means leaving behind most of your possessions, your carefully accumulated wealth, and the safe houses that have sheltered you for years. Everything you've worked for must be sacrificed for the slim chance of survival. But some resources are too valuable to abandon. Your best weapons, your most potent poisons, and your emergency funds hidden in various locations throughout the city could mean the difference between life and death in the coming confrontation. Retrieving these items requires careful planning and enormous risk, as your enemies will certainly be watching your known cache locations. The decision to fight rather than simply flee is based on cold calculation rather than bravery or desperation. Running away might provide temporary safety, but it would leave you vulnerable to pursuit indefinitely. The Campania della Motte has resources that extend far beyond Florence. They could track you across Europe if necessary. The only way to truly escape is to eliminate the threat permanently. This means turning from hunted to hunter, using your skills as an assassin to kill the assassins who are trying to kill you. It's a desperate strategy with little chance of success, but it's the only option that offers any hope of long-term survival. You must become more ruthless, more cunning, and more deadly than the professionals who are hunting you. The transformation from victim to predator requires abandoning the last vestiges of caution and morality that have constrained your actions. You can no longer afford to worry about innocent bystanders who might be hurt in your war against the Campania. You can't hesitate to use the most brutal and underhanded tactics available. You must become the monster that your training always intended you to be. Your first target is identified through careful observation of the Watchers who have been monitoring your safe houses. Marco Santini, a mid-level operative in the Campania, has been assigned to watch your merchant identities. Residence. He's skilled and experienced, but he's also become predictable through days of surveillance duty. The assassination of Marco requires every technique you've learned and several you improvise on the spot. Use a combination of poison, misdirection, and blade work to eliminate him in a way that sends a clear message to his colleagues, while providing you with valuable intelligence about their operations. Marco's death reveals the scope of the operation against you and provides crucial information about the Campania's plans. Documents found on his body indicate that they intend to capture you during a fake contract meeting. using a false client to lure you into a trap where overwhelming force can be brought to bear. But killing Marco also escalates the conflict beyond any possibility of negotiation or escape. The Compania now knows that you're aware of their hunt and willing to fight back. They'll abandon their careful, patient approach in favor of more direct and violent methods. The war between you and them has officially begun. The next few days become a deadly game of cat and mouse played out across the streets, rooftops, and hidden spaces of Florence. You use every skill you've learned to stay ahead of your pursuers, while systematically eliminating them one by one. Each kill provides intelligence about the others while reducing the resources available to hunt you. But your enemies are learning too, adapting their tactics to counter your strategies in closing the net around you with professional efficiency. The city becomes a battlefield where every encounter could be your last, where every decision could mean the difference between survival and a death that will be both prolonged and agonizing. The psychological toll of being constantly hunted while simultaneously hunting others pushes you beyond the limits of human endurance. Sleep becomes impossible, food becomes dangerous, and every moment of every day is consumed with calculations of survival and death. You're operating on pure adrenaline and professional instinct, pushed far beyond what any human mind was designed to handle. As the conflict intensifies and the body count rises, you begin to understand that this war can only end one way, with either your death or the complete destruction of everyone hunting you. There's no middle ground, no possibility of negotiation or compromise. You've crossed too many lines and killed too many people for any resolution, except total victory or total defeat. The hunt has transformed you into something beyond human recognition, a killing machine driven by desperation and fueled by the file knowledge that every moment of continued existence is borrowed time. You've become exactly what your training intended, but the cost has been everything that once made you a person rather than a weapon. The inevitable pursuit that defines the end of every assassin's career has begun, and there's no going back to the shadows and relative safety of your former existence. You're now fighting for your life against enemies who are every bit as skilled and ruthless as yourself, in a conflict that will determine whether you die as a hunted animal or survive as the ultimate predator. 3 weeks into your war against the Compagnia della Morte, you've managed to eliminate 4 of the 6 assassins hunting you, but the cost has been enormous. You're wounded, exhausted, and running out of resources, hiding in the ruins of an abandoned church outside Florence's walls. Your body bears the scars of multiple encounters, a deep gash across your ribs from a poisoned blade, burns on your hands from an alchemical trap, and a persistent cough from inhaling toxic fumes during your escape from the cathedral ambush. But the physical wounds are nothing compared to the psychological devastation that awaits you in the form of a familiar face emerging from the shadows of the ruined nave. Maestro Curvino steps into the dim light filtering through broken windows, but he's not alone. Behind him stands Alina, the prostitute who helped you identify your hunters, and beside her is a man you recognize as one of the remaining Campania operatives. The betrayal hits you like a physical blow, more painful than any weapon wound you've sustained. Alina, who risked her life to provide information, who claimed to need your help to escape the city with her daughter, has been working for your enemies from the beginning. Her assistance wasn't motivated by loyalty or desperation. It was part of an elaborate trap designed to manipulate you into revealing your capabilities and weaknesses. "I'm sorry," Elena says, but her voice lacks any genuine remorse. "My daughter needed medicine that I couldn't afford. The Campania offered enough gold to save her life and secure our future. You would have done the same thing." The casual way she justifies her betrayal reveals the fundamental truth about relationships in the world of professional assassination. Everyone has a price, and loyalty exists only until a better offer comes along. The bonds you thought existed between you and your contacts were illusions. business arrangements that could be dissolved the moment they became inconvenient or unprofitable. But Elena's betrayal, while painful, isn't the devastating blow that destroys whatever remains of your faith in human nature. That honor belongs to Maestro Corvino, the man who recruited you, trained you, and shaped you into the killer you've become. His presence here, working with your enemies, represents a betrayal so complete that it redefines everything you thought. You knew about your life and profession. You've become a liability, Corvino explains with the same cold professionalism he used when teaching you to kill. Your war against the Campania has drawn too much attention to our operations. The authorities are asking questions, other clients are becoming nervous, and your actions are threatening the careful balance that allows our business to function. The revelation that your own master has sold you out to save his organization is the final destruction of any illusions you might have harbored about honor among thieves or loyalty among killers. You realize now that you were never anything more than a tool to be used and discarded when convenient. The training, the guidance, even the apparent mentorship were all investments in a weapon that could be abandoned when it became more trouble than it was worth. Besides, Corvino continues, you've served your purpose admirably. The skills you've demonstrated in hunting the Campania operatives have provided valuable intelligence about their methods and capabilities. Your war against them has been an excellent field test of our training techniques, and the data we've gathered will help us improve our programs for future students.
You could
The
fight
casual
using your
admission that
skills
your
to kill
desperate
several
fight
of them
for
before
survival
being
has
overwhelmed.
been nothing
You
more
could try
than
to
a training
escape,
exercise
relying
for
on your
former
knowledge of the
master.
city and
Adds
your
another
experience with pursuit.
layer of betrayal
Not because
to
your
an
end
already
is gentle or
devastating
painless,
revelation.
but
Every
because you've
risk you've
finally
taken,
chosen to
every
stop running
wound
from the
you've
judgment you've always
suffered,
deserved.
every moment
But
of
instead,
terror and
you choose to
desperation
accept
has
the
been observed
consequences
and
of your
analyzed for its
actions with
educational
something
value.
approaching dignity.
You've been a laboratory
Your last thought
rat
is a
in an
prayer for the
experiment
souls of your victims,
designed to test
and a
the
hope that your
effectiveness
death
of
might somehow
assassination
balance the
techniques.
scales of
The
justice that your
Campania
life is so
operative
thoroughly
steps
corrupted.
forward, and
Within
you
hours, your
recognize
body
him
is
as
removed
Alessandro
and buried in
Grimaldi,
an unmarked
one of the
grave
most
outside the
feared
city
killers
walls,
in Italy.
with no
His
ceremony or
reputation
remembrance to mark the
for
end of one of
creative
history's most
torture and
feared
prolonged
assassins.
death is legendary.
The story of your
even
final
among
choice
professional
spreads through the
assassins.
criminal underworld,
The fact that they've brought
becoming
him
a legend that
specifically
warns
for your
others about the
capture
true cost of
indicates
the
that your
assassin's
death will
path.
not be quick or merciful.
Some say you found redemption
The
in your
Medici
last
family
moments,
wants you alive.
while others claim you
Grimaldi
simply went
explains with
mad from
obvious
years of
disappointment.
isolation and violence.
They have questions
The
about
shadows
your
that once
clients, your
protected you
methods,
became a
and
prison.
your organization.
The skills that
But
made you
they've
deadly
given me
made you
considerable
inhuman,
latitude in how I
and the
extract
isolation that kept you
information.
safe
And I
made you
intend
insane.
to take my time with
Profession
the process.
demands the sacrifice
The
of everything
prospect
that
of
makes
torture
life
at the
worth
hands
living,
of a master
leaving
like
only the
Grimaldi
hollow
is
shell of a
terrifying
person who has
enough.
forgotten
But
how
the
to be
knowledge
human.
that you'll be expected
Your
to
death
betray
was
your
violent
former
and painful,
clients and
but it was also a
associates
release from an
adds another
existence that had
dimension of
become
horror to
unbearable.
your situation.
In seeking
You'll be
power over
forced to
death, you lost the
provide
ability to
information
truly
that will
live.
lead to the deaths of
But the
people who
darkness always
trusted
wins
you,
in the end,
continuing the
consuming
cycle
those
of
who serve it
betrayal
until
that has
nothing remains
defined
but
your
the memory
entire
of
career. But
what
even
they
as
might have
despair
been if they had
threatens to
chosen a different
overwhelm
path.
you, the
In
training
pursuing
that has
wealth
shaped
through
your
murder,
entire
you
adult
became
life
poorer than the beggars you
reasserts
once envied.
itself.
In trying to
You're
escape the
outnumbered 3 to 1,
vulnerability of human
wounded and
connection,
exhausted,
you condemned
but you're
yourself to
still
an
a
isolation
professional
more complete
assassin
than any
with
prison.
years of experience
As the
in
blades
killing
pierce your
people who
body, and
underestimate
your
you.
blood flows onto the
The
cathedral's
betrayal that
ancient
has brought you
stones,
to this point
you
also
experience
provides
something that no
opportunities for
assassin in history has ever
revenge that
achieved:
might make your
a peaceful
inevitable
death.
death worthwhile.
Your last sight
Your
is of
hand
Cardinal
moves
Toriani,
slowly toward the
alive and
concealed
unharmed,
blade in your boot,
continuing his
a
sermon
movement
about
so
forgiveness
subtle
and
that your
redemption.
enemies don't notice
You
it.
died as you lived,
Years of practice have
violently
made
and alone,
such gestures
surrounded by
automatic,
enemies
and
and
the
haunted
muscle
by the
memory
ghosts
of
of your
violence
victims.
overrides the
But a
emotional
descent into
trauma
madness
of
and
betrayal.
isolation that destroys
You might
everything
die in this
human about
ruined
those who
church,
practice
but you
it.
won't die alone.
You gain the power to take
Elena
life at
notices
will,
your movement
but you
first,
lost the ability
her
to
eyes
truly
widening.
live.
As
You
she
achieved wealth and
realizes
fear
that
and
her
respect.
betrayal hasn't
You
broken your
sacrificed
spirit
love
as
and
completely
trust
as
and
expected.
But in
He's
choosing
going
to
for a
spare Cardinal
weapon.
Toriani
She
and
shouts,
accept your fate
stepping back
rather than
toward the
fighting to the
relative
end,
safety of the church's
you
entrance.
demonstrated that
But
even
her
the most
warning
corrupted
comes too
soul
late.
retains some
Your
capacity
blade
for
is
moral
already
choice.
in motion.
The
Thrown
crowd
with the
disperses
precision that
quickly,
years of
eager to
training
distance
have made
themselves from the
instinctive.
violence that has erupted in
The
their sacred
stiletto
space.
takes Elena in the
But
throat,
your death,
severing
unlike your
her
life,
carotid artery,
serves a
and
purpose beyond
ensuring
destruction.
that her betrayal will be
The
the
truth,
last act
as
of her
always in
life.
the world of medieval
She falls
assassination,
backward,
is more
clutching at the
complex
wound
than the
while
legend
blood pours
suggests.
between her fingers.
Your story serves as a
Grimaldi
warning
reacts with
about the true
professional
nature of the
speed,
assassin-esque
drawing his
profession,
own weapon
not
and
the
moving
romantic
to flank
adventure.
you while Corvino retreats
Portrayed
to
in
a
stories
safer
and
distance.
songs,
But
In
you're
the end,
already
being a
in
medieval
motion,
assassin was exactly
using the
what you learned in
church's
your
broken
final moments.
architecture to your
A
advantage.
living hell
as you
that
seek
consumed
cover
everything
behind
good about human
fallen
nature,
stones and
offering
shattered
nothing meaningful
pillars.
in return.
The fight that follows
No
is
assassin
brief,
dies
but
peacefully,
vicious.
because
A
no
deadly
assassin
dance
lives
between
peacefully.
professionals who
Music
understand
fades
each
to
other's
silence,
capabilities
leaving only
intimately.
the sound of wind through empty
Grimaldi is
spaces.
skilled and
And
experienced,
so ends the
but he's
nightmare
also
of the medieval
overconfident,
assassin, a
expecting
cautionary
to face a
tale
broken
about the
and
price of
demoralized
choosing
opponent,
violence as a
rather
way
than a
of life.
cornered predator
The
with
shadows
nothing
have
left
claimed
to
another
lose.
victim. The
Your
cycle
second blade
continues with
finds
new
its mark
recruits who
in
believe they can
Grimaldi's
succeed
kidney,
where others
a
have failed.
wound that will kill him slowly and painfully over the next several minutes. As he falls, clutching at the spreading stain on his tunic, you turn your attention to Maestro Corvino, the man who made you into a killer and then betrayed you to your enemies. Corvino has drawn his own weapon, but his hands are shaking with age and fear. The master assassin who once seemed so formidable is revealed to be an old man who has spent too many years sending others to do his killing while avoiding personal risk. His betrayal of you was motivated not by cold calculation, but by cowardice and self-preservation. "Wait," he pleads, backing against the church's altar. "We can negotiate. I can call off the remaining Campania operatives. I can provide you with new identities, safe passage out of Italy. Your skills are too valuable to waste in a pointless death." The offer is probably genuine. Corvino understands that you've become more dangerous than he anticipated, and he's willing to cut his losses rather than risk his own life. But the time for negotiation passed the moment he chose to betray you. Some lines once crossed can never be uncrossed. Your final blade slides between Corvino's ribs with the same precision you used on your very first victim. As he slides down the altar stone, his blood mixing with centuries of accumulated dust and debris, you feel a sense of completion that goes beyond simple revenge. You've killed the man who created you, destroying the source of your own corruption. But the satisfaction of revenge is short-lived, replaced by the crushing realization of what your life has become. You're standing in a ruined church, surrounded by the bodies of people you've killed, covered in blood and bearing wounds that may prove fatal. You've destroyed everyone who betrayed you, but you've also eliminated any possibility of escape or redemption. The silence that follows the violence is profound and unsettling. Outside, the world continues its normal rhythm, but inside this abandoned sanctuary, you're alone with the consequences of a life devoted to death. The bodies around you represent not just your enemies, but also the relationships and connections that might have provided meaning and purpose to your existence. Elena's corpse reminds you that trust is a luxury that people in your profession can't afford. Her betrayal wasn't motivated by malice, but by desperation and the need to protect her child. In a different world, you might have been allies or even friends, but the nature of your profession made such relationships impossible. Grimaldi's body represents the inevitable end that awaits all professional killers. He was skilled, experienced, and successful, but ultimately he died violently at the hands of someone younger and more desperate. His fate is a preview of your own future, assuming you live long enough to face it. Corvino's death is the most significant, representing the destruction of the system that created and sustained you. He was your teacher, your employer, and in some twisted way, your father figure. His betrayal and subsequent death have severed the last connection you had to any form of human relationship, leaving you completely alone in a world that wants you dead. The wounds you've sustained during the fight are beginning to take their toll. The gash in your side has reopened, and you can feel blood soaking through your clothes. The burns on your hands are becoming infected, and the persistent cough suggests that the toxic fumes you inhaled may have caused permanent damage to your lungs. But more than the physical injuries, you're suffering from a spiritual wound that goes to the core of your being. The betrayals you've experienced have destroyed whatever remained of your capacity for trust, hope, or human connection. You've become exactly what your training intended, a perfect killing machine. But the cost has been everything that once made you human. The realization that you're completely alone in the world is both liberating and terrifying. You have no obligations to anyone, no relationships to maintain, no loyalties to honor. You're free to make choices based purely on your own survival and interests. But you're also isolated from the human connections that provide meaning and purpose to most people's lives. As you search the bodies for useful items, weapons, money, information, you understand that this moment represents a fundamental transformation in your existence. You're no longer an assassin working for an organization or serving clients. You're a lone predator operating outside any social structure, accountable to no one but yourself. The documents you find on Grimaldi's body reveal that there's still one Campania operative hunting you, but also that the Medici family's interest in your capture is waning. The cost of the operation has exceeded their expectations, and they're beginning to question whether your elimination is worth the continued investment of resources. This information provides a glimmer of hope for survival, but it also highlights the fundamental meaninglessness of the conflict that has consumed your life. You've killed and been hunted not for any grand purpose or noble cause, but because of a business dispute that your original client failed to fully disclose. Your entire war against the Campania has been fought over money and commercial interests that have nothing to do with justice, honor, or any higher principle. The betrayals you've experienced have taught you the final lesson of your profession: that loyalty, trust, and human connection are weaknesses that will inevitably be exploited by those who seek to profit from your skills. The only reliable relationship is the one between predator and prey. And the only trustworthy ally is the weapon in your hand. As you prepare to leave the ruined church and face whatever remains of your enemies, you understand that you've been transformed into something that exists outside normal human society. You're no longer capable of the relationships and emotions that define human existence. You've become a perfect instrument of death, but the price has been your own humanity. The betrayals that brought you to this point have completed the process that began when you were first recruited as a desperate street child. Every human connection has been severed, every moral restraint has been removed, and every emotion except the will to survive has been burned away. You've achieved the ultimate goal of assassin training. You've become a weapon that feels nothing, trusts no one, and kills without hesitation or remorse. But weapons, no matter how perfect, are ultimately tools to be used and discarded by others. And in a world where everyone has a price and every relationship is transactional, even the most skilled assassin is just another commodity to be bought, sold, and eventually disposed of when they become inconvenient. 5 years have passed since the betrayals in the ruined church, and you've survived longer than most in your profession. But survival has come at a cost that makes death seem like a mercy. You're 31 years old, ancient by assassin standards, and your body bears the accumulated damage of decades of violence, poison exposure, and constant stress. More importantly, your mind has been shaped by years of isolation and brutality into something that barely resembles human consciousness. You've eliminated the last Campania operative, ended the Medici contract through a combination of violence and negotiation, and established yourself as an independent killer for hire. Your reputation has spread throughout Italy and beyond, making you one of the most feared and expensive assassins in Europe. But success in your profession is measured in survival time, not wealth or fame. And you know that your time is running out. The signs of your approaching end are everywhere, written in the tremor of your hands when you think no one is watching, in the persistent cough that brings up blood, in the way your vision blurs during moments of stress. The poisons you've used throughout your career have accumulated in your system, causing organ damage that no medieval physician could treat, even if you dared to consult one. The wounds you've sustained have healed poorly, leaving you with chronic pain and reduced mobility that make you less effective in combat. But the physical deterioration is nothing compared to the psychological damage that defines your final years. You've killed so many people that you've lost count. and their faces haunt your dreams when sleep is possible at all. The isolation that has protected you from betrayal has also cut you off from any source of human warmth or connection. You exist in a world populated entirely by enemies, victims, and tools to be used for your survival. The paranoia that once served as a survival mechanism has become a consuming madness that makes normal interaction impossible. You see threats everywhere, analyze every conversation for hidden meanings, and trust no one completely. The skills that made you an effective killer have transformed you into something that can no longer function in human society. Even the criminal Underworld that once provided your livelihood. Your current residence is a fortified tower outside Rome, purchased with the accumulated wealth of your career and modified into a fortress that reflects your complete alienation from the world. Building has no ground-level entrances, multiple escape routes, and enough stored supplies to withstand a siege. It's the home of someone who expects to die violently and wants to make that death as expensive as possible for his enemies. But even this fortress can't protect you from the enemy that will ultimately destroy you. Yourself, the psychological. Damage accumulated over years of killing has created a form of madness that makes continued existence unbearable. You're haunted by the voices of your victims, tormented by memories of betrayals and violence, and consumed by a paranoia that makes every moment a struggle against imaginary threats. The realization that you're losing your sanity is both terrifying and oddly liberating. You've spent your entire adult life fighting to survive, but now you're beginning to understand that survival itself has become a form of torture. The skills and instincts that kept you alive have also trapped you in an existence that offers no pleasure, no peace, and no hope for redemption. Your final contract arrives through the usual channels, a coded message hidden in a merchant's ledger, offering an enormous sum for the assassination of a papal legate who has been interfering with certain commercial interests. The target is well protected and highly visible, making the job extremely dangerous even by your standards. Under normal circumstances, you might have refused such a risky commission, but these are not normal circumstances. You accept the contract not because you need the money or because you believe in the cause, but because you recognize it as an opportunity for a form of suicide that maintains some dignity and purpose. You're going to die soon regardless. The poisons in your system and the damage to your mind make that inevitable. But this contract offers the possibility of dying as a professional rather than as a madman wasting away in isolation. The preparation for your final assassination is more elaborate and careful than any job you've undertaken. You spend weeks studying the target, his habits, his security arrangements, and the political implications of his death. But you also spend time preparing for your own death, writing letters that will never be sent and making arrangements for the disposal of your possessions. The papal legate, Cardinal Francesco Torriani, is a man of genuine virtue and intelligence who has dedicated his life to reforming the Church's financial practices and eliminating corruption. He's exactly the kind of person who doesn't deserve to die, which makes him a perfect target for your final demonstration of the moral emptiness that has defined your career. Your plan for the assassination is elegant in its simplicity and devastating in its implications. You'll poison the cardinal during a public ceremony, using a toxin that will cause symptoms resembling divine ecstasy before bringing about death. The method will create maximum psychological impact while providing you with an opportunity to escape or to die fighting if escape proves impossible. But as you prepare for the mission, you're forced to confront the reality of what you've become and what you're about to do. You're planning to murder a good man for money, using skills that were developed through years of brutality and corruption. You've become exactly the kind of monster that society creates assassins to eliminate, and your death will be a service to humanity, regardless of how it's accomplished. The night before the assassination, you experience something that you haven't felt in years: genuine remorse. Not the tactical regret of a mission gone wrong or the fear of consequences, but actual moral anguish over the harm you've caused and are about to cause. The emotion is so unfamiliar that it takes you several minutes to recognize what you're feeling. This unexpected return of conscience creates a crisis that threatens to derail your carefully laid plans. For the first time in decades, you're forced to confront the full magnitude of your crimes and the suffering you've inflicted on innocent people. The faces of your victims, which you've trained yourself to ignore, suddenly demand acknowledgement and accountability. The realization that you're capable of feeling guilt and remorse suggests that some fragment of your original humanity has survived the years of conditioning and violence. But this discovery comes too late to change anything meaningful about your life or your choices. You're too damaged to seek redemption, too isolated to form genuine relationships, and too dangerous to be allowed to live. The morning of the assassination arrives gray and cold, with a bitter wind that seems to cut through your clothes and chill your bones. You make your way to the cathedral, where Cardinal Torriani will be conducting a special mass for the city's poor, a ceremony that perfectly embodies the virtue and compassion that you're about to destroy. 5 years have passed since the betrayals in the ruined church, and you've survived longer than most in your profession. But survival has come at a cost that makes death seem like a mercy. You're 31 years old, ancient by assassin standards, and your body bears the accumulated damage of decades of violence, poison exposure, and constant stress. More importantly, your mind has been shaped by years of isolation and brutality into something that barely resembles human consciousness. You've eliminated the last Campania operative, ended the Medici contract through a combination of violence and negotiation, and established yourself as an independent killer for hire. Your reputation has spread throughout Italy and beyond, making you one of the most feared and expensive assassins in Europe. But success in your profession is measured in survival time, not wealth or fame. And you know that your time is running out. The signs of your approaching end are everywhere, written in the tremor of your hands when you think no one is watching, in the persistent cough that brings up blood, in the way your vision blurs during moments of stress. The poisons you've used throughout your career have accumulated in your system, causing organ damage that no medieval physician could treat, even if you dared to consult one. The wounds you've sustained have healed poorly, leaving you with chronic pain and reduced mobility that make you less effective in combat. But the physical deterioration is nothing compared to the psychological damage that defines your final years. You've killed so many people that you've lost count, and their faces haunt your dreams when sleep is possible at all. The isolation that has protected you from betrayal has also cut you off from any source of human warmth or connection. You exist in a world populated entirely by enemies, victims, and tools to be used for your survival. The paranoia that once served as a survival mechanism has become a consuming madness that makes normal interaction impossible. You see threats everywhere, analyze every conversation for hidden meanings, and trust no one completely. The skills that made you an effective killer have transformed you into something that can no longer function in human society. Even the criminal underworld that once provided your livelihood. Your current residence is a fortified tower outside Rome, purchased with the accumulated wealth of your career and modified into a fortress that reflects your complete alienation from the world. Building has no ground-level entrances, multiple escape routes, and enough stored supplies to withstand a siege. It's the home of someone who expects to die violently and wants to make that death as expensive as possible for his enemies. But even this fortress can't protect you from the enemy that will ultimately destroy you. Yourself, the psychological damage accumulated over years of killing has created a form of madness that makes continued existence unbearable. You're haunted by the voices of your victims, tormented by memories of betrayals and violence, and consumed by a paranoia that makes every moment a struggle against imaginary threats. The realization that you're losing your sanity is both terrifying and oddly liberating. You've spent your entire adult life fighting to survive, But now you're beginning to understand that survival itself has become a form of torture. The skills and instincts that kept you alive have also trapped you in an existence that offers no pleasure, no peace, and no hope for redemption. Your final contract arrives through the usual channels, a coded message hidden in a merchant's ledger, offering an enormous sum for the assassination of a papal legate who has been interfering with certain commercial interests. The target is well protected and highly visible, making the job extremely dangerous even by your standards. Under normal circumstances, you might have refused such a risky commission, but these are not normal circumstances. You accept the contract not because you need the money or because you believe in the cause, but because you recognize it as an opportunity for a form of suicide that maintains some dignity and purpose. You're going to die soon regardless. The poisons in your system and the damage to your mind make that inevitable. But this contract offers the possibility of dying as a professional rather than as a madman wasting away in isolation. The preparation for your final assassination is more elaborate and careful than any job you've undertaken. You spend weeks studying the target, his habits, his security arrangements, and the political implications of his death. But you also spend time preparing for your own death, writing letters that will never be sent and making arrangements for the disposal of your possessions. The papal legate, Cardinal Francesco Torriani, is a man of genuine virtue and intelligence who has dedicated his life to reforming the Church's financial practices and eliminating corruption. He's exactly the kind of person who doesn't deserve to die, which makes him a perfect target for your final demonstration of the moral emptiness that has defined your career.
Relying on your knowledge of the city and your
assassination is
experience with
elegant
precision.
in its simplicity
Not because your end
and
is gentle
devastating
or painless,
in its implications.
because you've finally
You'll
chosen to
poison the
stop running
cardinal
from the
during a
judgment
public
you've always
ceremony,
deserved.
using
But
a
instead,
toxin that will
you
cause
choose to accept
symptoms
the
resembling
consequences of
divine
your
ecstasy
actions
before
with
bringing
something
about
approaching
death.
dignity.
The method will
Your last
create
thought is a
maximum
prayer for the souls of your
psychological
victims,
impact, while
and a hope that
providing
your
you with
death
an
had
opportunity
somehow
to
balanced the
escape
scales
or
of
to die
justice that your
fighting
life is so
if
thoroughly
escape
corrupted.
proves impossible.
Within hours,
But
your
as you
body is
prepare for the
removed and
mission,
buried in an
you're
unmarked
forced
grave
to
outside the
confront the
city
reality
walls.
of what you've become.
With no ceremony or
and what
remembrance
you're
to
about
mark
to
the end
do.
of one of history's
You're
most feared
planning to
assassins.
murder a good man for money.
The story of your
using
final
skills
choice
that were
spreads
developed
through the
through
criminal
years of
underworld,
brutality and
becoming
corruption.
a legend that warns others
You've
about
become
the true
exactly
cost
the
of
kind
the
of
assassin's
monster
path.
that society creates
Some say you
assassins
found
to
redemption in
eliminate,
your last
and
moments,
your death will be a
while
service
others
to
claim you
humanity,
simply went mad
regardless
from
of
years
how
of
it's
isolation and
accomplished that
violence.
the night before the
The
assassination.
shadows that once protected
you
you became a
experienced
prison.
something that you
The
haven't
skills that made you deadly
felt in years,
made you inhuman.
genuine remorse.
And the isolation
Not
that kept
the
you safe
tactical regret of a
made you
mission
insane.
gone wrong or the
Profession
fear of
demands the
consequences,
sacrifice of
but
everything
actual
that makes
moral
life worth
anguish
living,
over the harm
leaving
you've
only the
caused
hollow
and are
shell of a
about to
person who
cause.
has forgotten how
The
to be
emotion
human.
is so unfamiliar
Your death
that
was
it
violent
takes you
and
several
painful,
minutes to
but it was also a
recognize what you're
release from an
feeling.
existence that had
This
become
unexpected
unbearable.
return
In
of
seeking
conscience
power over
creates
death,
a crisis
you lost
that
the
threatens
ability
to
to
derail
truly
your
live.
carefully laid plans.
But the darkness always wins
For
in
the
the
first
end,
time in decades,
consuming those
you're
who serve it
forced
until nothing remains
to
but the
confront
memory
the
of
full magnitude of your
what
crimes
they might have been if
and
they
the
had chosen a
suffering you've
different path.
inflicted on innocent people.
In pursuing wealth through
The
murder,
faces of
you
your
became
victims,
poorer than the
which you've
beggars
trained
you once
yourself to
envied.
ignore,
In trying to
suddenly
escape
demand
the vulnerability of human
acknowledgement and
connection,
accountability that
you
the
condemned yourself to an
realization that
isolation
you're
more complete than any
capable
prison.
of feeling guilt
As the
and
blades
remorse
pierce your body,
suggests that
and your
some
blood
fragment
flows
of
onto
your
the
original
cathedral's
humanity
ancient stones,
has survived the
you
years of
experience something
conditioning
that no
and
assassin
violence.
in history has ever
But this
achieved.
discovery comes
A
too late
peaceful
to
death.
change anything meaningful
Your last
about
sight
your
is of
life
Cardinal
or your
Torriani,
choices.
alive and
You're
unharmed,
too damaged
continuing
to
his
seek
sermon
redemption,
about forgiveness
too
and redemption.
isolated to form genuine
died as you
relationships, and too
violently and
dangerous
alone,
to be allowed to
surrounded
live
by
out the
enemies
morning
and
of the
haunted by the ghosts of your
assassination.
victims.
Arrives
But
gray
a descent
and
into
cold,
madness and
with a
isolation
bitter
that
wind
destroys
seems to
everything
cut
human
through your
about those who
clothes
practice
and
it.
chill your bones.
You gain the power to
You
take
make
life
your
at
way
will,
to the cathedral,
but you lost
where
the ability
Cardinal
to truly
Torriani
live.
will be conducting a
You
special
achieved wealth and
mass for
fear
the
and
city's
respect,
poor,
but you
a
sacrificed
ceremony
love,
that
and
perfectly
trust, and hope.
embodies
But
the
in choosing
virtue
to spare
and
Cardinal
compassion that
Torriani
you're about to
and accept your
destroy.
fate rather than